Welcome to Microbrew Gamers, and this is my October episode. In this episode, I'm going to review a Halloween-themed beer and a horror game, Outlast Trinity on the PS4. So the beer is from Shipyard Brewing. So they got a little Pumpkinhead Ale. This is a little Ichabod Crane in there, Headless Horseman of the Pumpkin. Now, it's a wheat ale, and it's brewed with pumpkin flavoring and in a blend of spices, including nutmeg, cinnamon, and some other proprietary stuff. Wheat ale, which this is one, is traditionally a beer that's brewed with a larger amount of wheat than malted barley, and it's usually top fermented, which this one is. Now, this is a perfect fall, being everything pumpkin spice, this is a perfect fall beer. And this right here is only available September through November, so it's definitely a seasonal beer. In fact, Shipyard likes to do a lot of seasonal beers. Now, the recommended, I'm going to sip it first, try it straight on, but the recommended way of drinking this is actually rimming your pint glass with some sugar and cinnamon. So I'm going to try that in a second, first out the bottle, then it'll be in the glass. Now, the yeast is top fermenting English, with the hops is the Willamette Saphir. It's golden color, it's about 4.5% ABV, so 4.5% alcohol, so it's not too much, so it's not bad. As far as the alcohol content, it's nice, a little bit of mirror age. Not going to hit you hard, so let's try it out. That's pretty tasty. That's interesting. That's pretty tasty. I don't get hit with an overwhelming flavor of cinnamon and nutmeg and pumpkin. It's there, but very lightly. So, I like this beer. It tastes good. It's a good wheat ale. But, I must try the recommended way. The recommended way. And of course, in my trusty link glass. So, I've got a nice little rim of cinnamon sugar right there. I prepared before the video. So I'm going to go ahead and try this. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that. So for all you pumpkin spicers out there, beer for you. This is definitely a good tasting one. The cinnamon sugar definitely adds to it. So it's well done. And it's not overly... The beer's not overly sweet, and you'll get a hint of the pumpkin and nutmeg and cinnamon. You don't get a overpowering taste of it. It's barely there, but it's brought out a little bit more by the cinnamon sugar on the rim of the glass, which is nice. That's going to go down nice. All right, and for on the Outlast Trinity Gen PS4. Now this Trinity, the original came out back in 2013, and this package right here includes the original Outlast game, which is great, and then it includes Outlast Whistleblower, which is pretty much a prologue and then the epilogue to the story, so the kind of before the story and after a little bit. And then of course it's got the much-awaited Outlast II on this, so it's basically 2 full games and 1 set of DLC. It's pretty much practically a game in itself. So this is a nice little package. I didn't pick it up for too much, so it's I think I picked it up for about $30. So it was pretty nice. So I found that, and I'm going to delve into that. I played through the original Outlast when it first came out, which was fantastic. I loved it. And these games, they are very good, and they have gotten great reviews by both critics and players alike. Now, what I would recommend with Outlast is play it in a nice dark room by yourself or with a couple friends and invest in some really good audio, whether it be a nice surround sound or really good high-end earphones, because there's a lot of audio you might miss. It makes this a lot spookier to have good audio. I played it through a little bit with played it part way without the good audio, and then I went back and played it with some excellent audio, and it made a huge difference. It was a lot spookier when you could hear all the little sounds much clearer. So, great stuff for for the Halloween season. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at that gameplay footage and a little bit more about that series. Outlast. Outlast first came out on September 4th, 2013 on Microsoft Windows and was developed and published by the indie game company Red Barrels. Now, I didn't get to play it until shortly after its first release on the PS4 on February 4th of 2014. The game utilized the Unreal Engine 3, and it's a single-player survival horror in which you play as an investigative journalist named Miles. Now, after receiving a message or a letter from one of the staff at Massive Asylum, he heads over and he breaks into the asylum in the mountains of Lake County, Colorado, to uncover the story of abuse and corruption by the Murkoff Corporation, who had built up quite a reputation by then. After breaking in, he is shortly greeted by a grisly scene of mutilated bodies of the staff, and the building looks very ransacked. Now, while exploring the area, Miles comes across a dying SWAT officer, and he lets him know that Asylum's deranged patients have all escaped and are butchering the staff. He tells Miles to escape to get away before dying himself. So Miles sets off in search of the exit to try to get out of there, and the mission begins after he comes across one of those big hulking deranged patients, who promptly throws him over the balcony and through a window, and he goes unconscious. After he wakes up, he basically has to find a way to get out of there to escape with his life and to try to figure out what's going on and gather evidence along the way against the Murkoff Corporation. Now, this game relies heavily on audio cues and jump scares mostly, but it also does so very effectively, and it also uses low visibility due to either, low lighting or lack thereof. You use the camera to record, and when you can't see, you use the feature for the night vision in it. This game did a very great job of delivering those scares, and was a lot of fun to play, especially if you have a very good headset. So if you get some really good quality audio, you really can get into the game, which I highly recommend. So go ahead and check out Outlast. This is Outlast Whistleblower, which is the DLC that includes a prologue to the original Outlast game, along with a conclusion to the cliffhanger ending of that game. Now, the prologue reveals all the events leading up to the start of the original game. The game starts off with the player playing as Waylon Park, who's a software engineer, working at Mount Massive Asylum for the Murkoff Corporation on the morphogenic engine software. Now, after witnessing the torture and abuse of the patients firsthand, he gets sick of it and just gets disgusted and decides to do something about it. He sends an email over to Miles Upshur, who's the protagonist of the original Outlast game, which kicks off the events of the first game, before getting found out by the Murkoff Corporation employees and then subjugated to the experiments himself. He gets admitted to the asylum, and of course a letter gets written to his wife that, he had an undiagnosed illness. He went crazy. So he volunteered to get put in. Now, after some experimentation, after some commotion, Waylon wakes up and gets free from his cell, and he finds a camcorder as he's bumbling about, and he can use it to gather evidence against the Murkoff Corporation, or use it for low light visibility areas using the night vision, same as the original game. Now, just like the original game, you can't fight anybody. You can only run, hide, or die, and so with that in mind, you start off trying to gather evidence and escape from the asylum. Now, this DLC is practically a game in itself. It's almost an entire game, and it does a great job of telling the before and some of the during from a different perspective, and the after of the original story. So it answers a lot of questions left from the first game, and it was a great addition to this horror game. It was fantastic. So basically, this game is actually a little bit more, like I said, a little bit more than just a prologue and epilogue. It goes through the events leading up to the first game, while Waylon is trying to get out of the asylum. So does the original character Miles. And then as Miles is trying to escape at the end of the first game, this takes place and continues that cliffhanger after that to answer those questions. So this is great. And it was a lot of fun. It was done very well by this small indie company, which it seems like more of a polished. I wouldn't quite say AAA title, but close. It was very polished. So that was very, very exciting to find out that, wow, just a small game company created something this big and then created DLC this good. So I would definitely recommend, if you have the original, go ahead and get the DLC, the Whistleblower, added to this. If not, if you don't have it already on PS4, they've got the Outlast Trinity, which includes Outlast, this DLC, Outlast Whistleblower, and the much awaited sequel, Outlast 2, which we'll get into Outlast 2 next. Outlast 2. This game was a much awaited sequel to the first game and Whistleblower DLC, and it was released on April 25th, 2017 for the PS4, Xbox One, and Windows. Digitally, actually. This game uses the same technology, pretty much the Unreal Engine 3, as the previous installments, and follows the same single-player survival horror format where you run, hide, or die. Now, this time the game takes place in northern Arizona instead of Colorado, in a rundown rural town called Supai, which is near the western edge of the Colorado Plateau. Now, you play as Blake Langerman, who is an investigative journalist. I sense a theme going on here. And cameraman, who works alongside his wife, Lynn. Now, they're both flying by helicopter to get to the area to investigate the death of a pregnant woman, only referred to as Jane Doe, when their helicopter experiences some issues and crashes. After a little bit of time, Blake wakes up to the side of the cliff and sees the flaming wreckage. He frantically makes his way down to it, only to find no bodies. So that he's partially relieved. One, there's no bodies, but two, he wants to find his wife, Lynn. So he begins the search. Now in his search, he comes up and finds his camera, which thankfully is undamaged in the crash, and he can use it to record evidence, record events, and of course the night vision portion of it, so to see in low light or no light areas. So he continues his search, and he comes up on the body of his pilot, skinned and crucified and bloody, which is a gruesome scene. Now this only panics Blake further. He continues to search for Lynn and comes up to a dilapidated town full of crazed cultists that believe that the end times are here. Now, the town is full of bloody bodies and murderous cultists that Blake has to try to avoid or else be killed. And in doing so, he needs to find Lynn and escape the area. That's his main mission. Now, details of the story are revealed through notes, overhearing the locals, and interactions with the two cults, as you find out there's more than one. Now, on top of that, Blake has increasingly frequent and disturbing hallucinations, / dreams of witnessing the murder of his and Lynn's childhood friend, Jessica. And as you play through the game, you will also discover what the Murkoff Corporation has to do with all this. And that's the last little hint / spoiler I'll leave there. Now, this game met with very generally favorable reviews. The few dissenting opinions I disagree with. I think it was a fantastic sequel, and I really liked it. It was every bit as disturbing as the first. And they packaged all three, Outlast, Whistleblower, and Outlast 2, in Outlast Trinity. It was released the same time as Outlast 2 on April 25th, 2017, but as a physical release, which included the Outlast Whistleblower, and Outlast 2, and it came out on PS4, Xbox One, and PC as a physical release. Now I played it through to get this game capture on the PS4 version, and it's a great package. Those three games, well, 2 games and DLC that could almost count as a game, was a great deal when it came out, and I was happy to get it and happy to play through. It's definitely a perfect set of games for the Halloween time frame. So I really encourage everybody to check it out. Welcome back, and that was a lot of fun. You got to see the horror that is the Outlast Trinity. So great game. Highly recommend you pick it up if you like horror. Perfect for the season. Halloween's coming up. And of course, great beer for Halloween and Thanksgiving with the pumpkin overtones. Just perfect fall beer. And it tastes really good, really smooth. So nothing's too strong for the overtones. Just an excellent beer. Highly recommend checking them out. If you liked my video, please subscribe. Hit the like button. Leave me some messages. How am I good? And is it good, bad, indifferent? And of course, have a safe and happy and spooky Halloween. Prost.